right. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining our webinar today on smart home solutions. If there are any late joiners, they will just miss the initial part of the webinar, but that's okay. Thank you very much for joining. My name is Andrew Tyler. I'm Sales and Business Development Manager for GoodWe for Sub-Saharan Africa. On the call, I have our Technical Manager for Sub-Saharan Africa, David Havenga, and then our guest presenter, I guess, Rainier Deroux from who's the technical director for MetSolar, who will be sharing a bit about their company and some experience on his personal experience, I guess, with the products and some smart home integration. For the first part of the webinar, I will be just going over the South African market overview and some drivers for the market quickly, and then I'll be handing over to David to take the discussion further. Just some housekeeping rules quickly. If you have any questions, please pop them in the Q&A box on the Zoom platform. That will be a nice way to ask any questions, which we'll leave to the Q&A section at the end. And then if you are wanting to see a recording of this presentation, it will be available on our community or solar community page, which is community.goodwe.com. Awesome. Let's get started. So very simply, looking at the South African solar market, I put quite an interesting image on the left, which pretty much shows the potential that South Africa have for solar power. We've got one of the best annual solar irradiation figures in the world. You'll see on the top right of that image that Germany's average solar radiation is far, far worse than what South Africa's is, but yet they're able to generate over 30 gigawatts from solar power, which is, in simple terms, about 6 times what Eskom's largest coal plant can generate. And that's with worse solar radiation versus what we have. So our potential is massive. The figures, just some quick figures for the market. So we've got around 1.3 gigawatts of solar PV installed in 2020 alone. Our cumulative capacity is in the 5 to 6 gigawatt level already. In 2020, which is the figures I'm focusing on, we had about 813 megawatts of utility scale and plus minus 500 megawatts of distributed generation. And that distributed generation is further split into both residential and CNI. And for the purpose of this webinar, because we're speaking about hybrid and smart home type solutions, our residential solar PV market in 2020 was plus minus 100 megawatts, which is massive. I mean, if you consider, a 10, 12, 15 panel roof is, 5 to 10 kilowatts of PV, that's a lot of, homes that basically added solar panels in 2020. We also see a compounded annual growth forecasted of around 10%, and that's per year, which is massive. So I think there's a great opportunity for us in South Africa and those that are operating into South Africa to use this to their advantage and of course use GoodWe products as they're the best and there's nothing else to consider. Moving on to the drivers. So I mean, this is quite a simple look at it. I didn't want to overcomplicate the slides. So the biggest thing for residential customers is rising electricity costs. We've seen in the news this week our utility provider requesting an increase of around 20.5% per kilowatt hour, which is huge and will affect the bottom dollar of a lot of homeowners. So having a solar system, especially a hybrid system like GoodWe offers, does put you in a position to be able to benefit from your solar PV on the roof, as well as discharging batteries in the evening for a full hybrid inverter, and that gives you the benefit of saving as much power as possible. Unreliable grid supply, as you know, I think in 2021 we had in South Africa the worst load shedding we've had in a long time in terms of actual hours that the grid was off. So having a hybrid system like GoodWe offers, you're able to have that peace of mind for grid supply with some batteries on your system. I think one of the biggest challenges in Africa and South Africa is finance availability. And in saying that, it's also a driver because we are seeing a lot more availability, especially for homeowners, being able to finance system through green bonds, through an additional to your bond. And of course, there's some providers out there doing private financing, but that makes it a little bit more accessible to those that don't have the capital lying around to invest in a solar system. And the payoff periods are becoming better as the electricity cost goes up. And then on point 4 is a follow on from that, in the fact that the cost of hardware is also being reduced and the efficiencies are going up. So, where previously you could only fit X amount of modules on your roof, with high efficiency, you are able to get additional power out of that same space, which is making the system more cost effective and the payoff periods a bit quicker. Market understanding, I think our market is starting to become a bit more savvy in terms of understanding the solar industry, what a solar system can do for them and the type of benefit it offers. And in saying that, it also opens up the acceptance of the market in terms of adding solar to their home. And then lastly, we're starting to slowly but surely see some regulatory changes in the residential space. Some municipalities are at least allowing, exporting of power or excess power. Whether there's benefit or payment for that is another story. But nonetheless, at least you're able to actually utilize that power, or at least let it be produced by your panels instead of throttling back. And then some municipalities do offer, the option of exporting with a bidirectional meter. However, it's not very beneficial in the sense that the costs outweigh what you actually get paid for in return for that exported power. But I guess, from a conscious point of view, at least you're doing your bit for the, for the market and reducing the, grid dependence, I guess. So yeah, that's everything from my side. A quick summary. If you have any questions, please pop it into the Q&A box for my part. Otherwise, I'd like to hand over to David Havenga to take you further on our products and solutions. Thank you.
Hi everyone, sorry I'm a bit slow there. My name is David Havenga, and I'm just going to go through some of our products and solutions that we have available. A lot of our products have a lot of new features, and there are also some new up and coming products as well. So we do have one of the widest portfolio range of storage inverters. Obviously not all of them are available in South Africa. Some of them don't really have use in South Africa or Africa in general. But as you see, we've got a very wide range of storage inverters. So ESEM, which are in South Africa, the ETR 3-phase hybrid, which is also here, ESA, which is a long one here at the back, that comes with batteries as well. But the SPP, the BH, the BT, the AES, those models aren't really here in South Africa. They don't really fit into our model. And then we have our new EHB, which is already available from all of our distributors, and the BTC, which is this large 50 kilowatt unit, which will be coming soon. We also have a line of batteries which is launching. So as I said, our ESA, which has batteries, you'll see the black battery here in front. So that's the battery that is installed in our ESA battery, and those are already available. The rest of our battery line, the Links U, Links S and H, and the Links F, also will be coming soon to South Africa. And there's a wide range of capacity options with these batteries. So now we move more into the smart control. So all of our devices, we try and make them as smart as possible to give you more. The smarter the devices are, the better they control the outputs, the more your savings are. So as our 3-phase devices, the ET and so will our ETC and BTC also have these functionalities. So 100% unbalanced output on three-phase, so which is one of the biggest problems on three-phase homes, especially if you have to export power limit. You always have to limit to the lowest phase so you don't export out to the grid. Normally that then results in very low PV performance because all of your loads are split between one and two phases. You can never perfectly balance those phases unless you are running three-phase equipment only. So in those instances, having a fully unbalanced system works ideal. Our three-phase inverter take the approach of individual phase export. So the export power limit can individual export power limit each phase. So they don't have to be balanced, you don't have to balance output. As long as you enable the unbalanced output function, that inverter will export power limit to each phase individually up to the maximum the inverter can produce. The inverters can also do unbalanced charging. So when you have that zero export, it can manage the loads and make sure that the consumption is equal. So that's really more in the commercial space. So with the larger 50 kilowatts, when you have the peak demand charge on your utility bill, that's where that's really going to come into play to mitigate that peak demand charge by balancing the phase usage through the inverter itself as well. So our ETs can already do that, and you can parallel them up to 10 units. On the grid side, only the parallel, and some customers do use them to do that balancing to make sure that the consumption from the utility is more balanced. But our larger units will come with more features for those big kVA charges. And obviously our backup output on the inverter is also completely unbalanced. So all of our devices have integrated automatic switching, which have 10 milliseconds or less. Some of our newer devices come with 8 millisecond changeover, which is more improved from the previous ones. But as a standard, most of the devices will have that 10 millisecond changeover. So if you have that continuous load running, you don't have loads going off for a few seconds and then back on again. It also helps to mitigate that in-rush current. Then with our EHB, which are our new line of inverters, which are available in South Africa at the moment, we have high capacity solutions. So the EHBs come up to a 10 kilowatt single phase device. These devices have intelligent control. Because of that 10 kilowatt capacity, you have a stronger off-grid up capability. They do come with a SPV type 2 protection for the PV and utility side as well. And they are IP65, so they can be installed outdoors. They are very easy to be used all over. Sorry about that. I'm just kidding. It's just this. Very sorry about that. Okay, so our devices also have a lot of other protections like reverse battery protection, polarity protection, even PV polarity protection, just to help mitigate any small mistakes we make as humans. So it gives you a lot more flexibility and comfort to know that the device will work even if we as people sometimes make mistakes. As well as the IP65, which is great for any coastal areas with high humidity, all of that. So that we know our device won't age and won't rust because all the internals are nicely sealed from that humidity. With this device, it also has ease of installation, so it's got the integrated breakers, it has an integrated changeover switch, so should something go wrong, your batteries fail, or anything has a chance of failing, lightning hits your inverter, now your inverter's dead, your customer can't wait, or it's 10 o'clock at night, you don't want to go out the side to bypass an inverter, that customer can simply just flip the bypass switch and continue working as normal from the utility. Then all of our devices work on a basis of an integrated solution. So we always have everything in one box. So all the necessary components, your MPPT chargers, your DC to DC charger, your AC output, your backup output, all of that is all self-contained in one unit. So and that also helps with a lot of space saved, installation time saved, commissioning is a lot simpler with our app, and also it gives you a higher system efficiency. So overall efficiency from charging your batteries to running your loads, you get better efficiency out of your systems, especially when one looks at the high voltage with the EHP and so forth. You're going to get much better battery so DC to AC conversion efficiencies. That's normally where a lot of other devices might give you a lot less efficiency. So even though you have a 10 kilowatt hour battery bank with only a 70 or 80% efficiency, and with only limited amount you can take out of your battery, you're going to get a lot less actual kilowatt hours in AC out of your battery, where with the higher efficiencies of high voltage and so forth, you're definitely going to get a lot more out of your batteries and a lot better value in the long run. And here's a look at our new ES Generation 2 that will be released probably around the middle of this year. So this Generation 2 device, as you can see, will come with a new streamlined form factor. It's going to come with a single phase up to 6 kilowatt, still with our low voltage batteries. So all the low voltage batteries that you are used to using in the field will all be compatible with this device as well as our new low voltage batteries. And this 6 kilowatt device, up to 6 kilowatt, so it will have the 3.5 or 4.6 and then a 6 kilowatt device that will give you a wider range of installations, as well as other features like the paralleling of the backup output as well. So if you have a 6 kilowatt system and you need 12 on single phase, or you need even more, you can parallel the devices. The paralleling will be single phase only at the moment. Our goal is to look at least a minimum of 3 devices on parallel, but we might be looking at closer to 8 devices being able to be paralleled in a single phase system. There's also a lot of other extra control systems and improvements that will be coming with our device, like a generator automatic start-stop, 4G communication for those remote areas where you're installing the devices remotely, increased PV current. So because of our new modules all have higher current inputs, we're increasing the current input for the inverter, and also the backup overload capability of the inverter will also be increased. So we're looking at 2 times backup overload ability with the utility available, and at least 1.5 when it's unavailable if you have sufficient battery capacity. So all of our inverters, even the old ones in the field with the new firmwares on them, ESs included, we all have this real DC oversizing. So the real DC oversizing, so in our data sheets, we refer to DC oversizing maximum. So this example here is on the 10 kilowatt EHP. You'll see in the manual it says maximum DC oversize of 15 kilowatt. And that's real DC oversizing. So you can actually utilize all of that energy. As you'll see, we can give you a maximum of your 10 kVA to your AC loads, so be it backup, be it to the utility loads, and then that other 5 kilowatts can be used to charge your batteries. So if you do have a customer who has a high AC demand, even if it's on the utility side, you can oversize that PV. It can still match that 10 kilowatt demand during the day, as well as still charge your batteries at a rate of up to 5 kilowatts. To make sure that the batteries get full by the night time to compensate the loads during the night. So that's great for customers who have big daytime loads and to really maximize the system and the benefits. And I'm sure Renier is going to explain quite a bit how this can work very well with load management. And then a look at our new ETC. So the ETC and BTC are two products that are in par. So the BTC does not have MPPTs, but the ETC does. So we hope to have this also launched or available in South Africa around about the same time as our new ES Generation 2. You'll see these devices are modular designed. So they'll be able to either give you a 50 or a 100 kilowatt. And with this new design, you can essentially start with a 50 and upgrade it to a 100 kilowatt later on. As you'll see, everything is in different modules. So that also makes it nice for maintenance. So if down the line something does go wrong, there's a lightning strike and your MPPT fails, you simply pull out the MPPT rack, install a new one, and carry on working. These devices also have a lot of features and functionalities, from load management to that peak demand that I was mentioning earlier. So we know when customers are billed on KVR, normally that spike peak demand increases their bill immensely. These devices are being designed to have that KVR compensation, so that even if you are saving your batteries for outages, it will use that batteries momentarily to mitigate that KVR demand to increase those customer savings. And thank you very much. That's all for my presentation. Oh, I'm very sorry. My screen automatically closed itself. I'll hand you over to Rainier to continue his section of the presentation.
Hello, everyone. Sorry, I'm just, there you go. Hello, my name is Rainier. I'm the Technical Director at MetSolar, Pty Limited. And just a brief overview of MetSolar. MetSolar was founded in 2012 by Jonathan and Brian Matheson. They actually started the company to form part of the IPP project that was rolled out at that stage. But as we all know, that was quite a challenging thing to do. So they went next door and they built a 5 megawatt power station for NamPower in Namibia. And from there on, MetSolar went on to build quite a few projects, commercial and residential projects in Namibia. And then we started getting traction back into South Africa a few years ago. And since then, we've installed up to 13.2 megawatt peak of solar systems and about 2.8 megawatt hours of storage. Our main focus is in the commercial industrial space. However, we do quite a bit of residential work, but more on the premium side of things. We don't really deal with these value or budget systems because our focus is in the commercial industrial space. We've been using GoodWe for quite a few years, as I mentioned, mostly in the residential space. And over the last few years, we've started giving them a go on the commercial products. And we've done 2 test sites and we're very impressed with the quality and the performance of the systems. And we currently have about 500 kilowatts of commercial projects under construction with GoodWe's commercial rooftop inverters. Over the years, we've done about 30 plus commercial or residential installations with GoodWe, and that equates to about 210 kilowatt peak of residential installs with GoodWe use inverters. With GoodWe, we obviously have quite a nice informative monitoring portal, and by monitoring all of our residential sites, we were able to identify a few pain points. Firstly, being that we can see that they're not fully utilizing the systems. And like I said, with the informative portal, we were able to identify that and see if there's a need for something like smart home management. So the big problem that most houses sit with that we've noticed is that most people are at work during the day. So hence not a high power consumption. In the evening, everyone's at home cooking, showering, doing all the house chores. And that's when you will see your load spike. And typically, if you look at a household and you break down all your loads, you will see that we've got something we call user-controlled loads. User-controlled loads would be things like your dishwashers, your microwaves, your stove, your oven, your geysers. Oh, no, sorry, not your geysers, your air cons and your kettle. And then you have your non-user controlled loads. So your non-user controlled loads would be loads that's usually automatically controlled, whether it be by a thermostat or a timer or a pressure switch. And so those are the two types of loads we can look at to see where we can make adjustments to see if we can maximize our solar production and our solar penetration. Generally speaking, it's quite difficult to optimize user-controlled loads because that will require the users to have a change in ways of doing things. So, for example, you're used to packing your dishwasher at night, packing your dishes, and you'll switch on the dishwasher and you go to bed. And it will require a bit of a routine change where you can pack the dishwasher and maybe make use of your timer if your dishwasher has one to let it run the next day during sun hours. But that's not always possible. On your user-controlled loads, you do have a few exceptions. For example, if you've got one of these new Wi-Fi controlled smart inverter air cons, you can set up those units to switch on during the day when you know you have available solar power to cool down a room. We'll be going home to tonight because you do use a lot more energy to cool down a room than you would use to keep the room cold. But generally speaking, this will take routine changes for the most part to optimize. So that's definitely not the point we will be looking at. What we will be looking at is the non-user controlled loads, all the automatic loads. These loads, we can easily install equipment to control them to when they can switch on, when they have to switch off, and even give them some variables for if they can run or not, depending on certain aspects of your production or your solar system or the state of your load at that point. So we can do that by making use of things like a smart Wi-Fi switch, which I've personally used in our journey to explore this. You can use smart timers like your geyser-wise timers, where you can set up different temperatures for heating your geyser, for example. You can set it that it heats to a high temperature during the day and at low temperatures at night. So you can use that to maximize it. Why do we need to shift our loads around? So it's quite simple. If you look at the top graph, that's how a typical solar production graph will look on a good sunny day. And on the bottom graphs, that's the average load profile for a house in South Africa. As you can see, we do have quite a high peak at night outside of the sun hours, even though we do have increased load during the day. So it's not that you won't see any benefit from solar, but that's the pain point. That's where we would like to focus on to see if we can move that peak into the day where you actually have sunlight to help you cover that consumption and obviously not pay for it. Yeah, I have two examples of a residential installation without load optimization and a residential installation with load optimization. I don't know if you guys can see it here, it's quite small, I apologize, but if you follow the top graph, you will see that you have the blue line there would be your solar production. This house specifically doesn't have high loads during the day, except for the peak of the day, it's got a little bit, but for the most part, it charges battery full by 9 a.m. in the morning, and therefore your solar production drops off to match your load at that point. So you're not getting the maximum out of the system. I mean, the system only generated 11.6 kilowatt hours for that day. Where the example at the bottom is a house with load optimization. As you can see, we've got much higher loads during the day, and we've got a nice round solar production curve maximizing our solar production, and this system produced a total of 39 kilowatt hours per day. So load control is also quite an interesting topic, because there's basically two ways you can do it. There's the easy way and the hard way. So the easy way would be just, like I explained earlier, installing a geyser-wise system or installing a Wi-Fi smart switch from a brand that I personally have used called Sonoff. And these devices you can install and you can set up programs quite easily to let your devices run in certain periods that you've identified. You can run your run those loads in where you would benefit from it. So if we go back to the previous graph, I can see that in the top graph, from 10 a.m. in the morning up until 12 would be a perfect time for example, to heat your geyser. So you can identify those spaces on your production graph using a monitoring to identify when you can run your appliances to get the highest benefit out of them. And then obviously there's a hard way of doing it, and that's trying to make it fully autonomous. Currently, before seeing David's slide where they've implemented a form of load control on the inverters, the only way of doing this is using a third-party application that's called Home Assistant, where you can pull information from your inverter and you can use that information to autonomously switch your smart devices on or off based on certain variables you set up, predefined variables. So you could say if your solar production drops below a certain point, then you can switch off your pool pump. Or when the solar production is above a certain point, it can switch on the pool pump. So you can set up all these variables. You can, with the GoodWe inverters, we can also pull the information through the Home Assistant platform from the energy meter from the GoodWe. So I can track and say if I have if my grid import reaches a certain point, I can switch off my pool pump as an example. And that way you can firstly not just manage your loads to see you can move all your demand into your sun hours, but you can also manage your load so you don't exceed your production at that point. So if you've got a bit of a cloudy day, you can try and control your loads to a point where you don't exceed that production that's available, so that you don't maximize your solar and use as little from the grid as possible. So I started the smart home journey in 2019 at my house. I actually started out with a small grid tie inverter only. And just with a grid tie inverter, I was able to achieve a 50 to 60% saving just by managing my loads, getting them to run in a day. And that's also doing it the easy way, not the hard way. April last year, I installed a hybrid inverter at my house, and with some batteries, so obviously for the load shedding purposes and obviously for the increased savings purpose. And with that, just by adding the batteries to the mix and making the home optimization a bit smarter, I was able to get my savings up from between 60 and 90%. 60 being closer to my winter months. I've got a really bad production for some reason in the winter, and in the summer months, I see closer to 90% savings on my bill with the smart home management. So, how do we make these devices smart? A geyser is, in my opinion, one of your highest consumers. I personally like an electric geyser more than I would, or prefer an electric geyser more than I would prefer a heat pump or a solar thermal geyser, or a gas geyser for that matter. Because a normal electric geyser you can end up using as a battery. I can store energy in the form of heat in my geyser during the day. So currently, what I would recommend doing is get one of these sort of TH16 smart switches. That's just an example. Any smart controlled Wi-Fi switch would work there. Again, back to David's thing about the load control that you can have there. You can even use a load control output on an inverter. If they do offer that to switch your geyser on and off, obviously you'll still need a form of temperature control. So what I did is I took a sort of GH16. I replaced my geyser element from a 4 kilowatt to a 2 kilowatt element, just to keep that peak load lower, because I've got 8 hours to heat my geyser during the day. I don't need to heat it in an hour or two, so therefore I don't really need a 4 kilowatt. And then I used one of the geyser wires system's thermostats, and that's just for a legal purpose, as the son-of is just a little probe that fits into the temperature probe's hole in the geyser, and it doesn't offer a mechanical thermal cutout. So I just modified a geyser wire thermostat to have that thermal cutout, mechanical thermal cutout for legal purposes. So by doing this, I could set up the geyser to run in certain time periods, and this device is controllable through third-party platforms like Home Assistant as well. And I did the same thing on my pool pump. It was the net pool pump was my next pain point. I identified that it's a big consumer of electricity. There I just used a simple sort of switch. It's got no fancy things like temperature probes or anything. So there I can just set up time programs. It gives me remote control. One of the big benefits is if I sit here at the office, I'm still talking about the easy way of doing things, not the autonomous way. If I sit at the office, I see it's overcast, I can jump in my app and I can switch off my pool pump. Because in reality, you don't need to run your pool pump 24/7 every day, or it doesn't need to run every day. So the logic behind doing it the easy way is you have to look at your solar production curve, see where your solar production drops because of your load being too low. And then you can identify those gaps where you can see you've got to still have available production. Then you can, next step would be to install a smart device on the appliance you want to control. And then you can simply set up your that device to run in the period you've identified where it can run. So on the right-hand side of the screen, I actually shared 2 screenshots from my app that I personally used for the easy way of controlling it. That's my one geyser. As you can see, I've set my geyser to switch on at 10 a.m. in the morning and switch off at 3 p.m. in the afternoon. It heats my geyser to 75 degrees Celsius. I know that's quite hot. That's roughly in the range that a solar thermal geyser will heat your geyser. But that's just because I want to store more energy in the geyser at the end of the day. 99% of the times, I do not need to switch my geyser on again. I do have a fail-safe program set up there. Should my geyser be very cold the next morning, that it just heats it up a little bit so I have enough hot water for the morning shower. But this can be customized to suit your routine. But obviously, the ideal is just to have it run during the day, during sun hours. And like I said, by heating that geyser just past that 65 degrees limit you usually would have, and that's also one of the reasons I'm using a smart switch rather than a geyser wise, is because I'm not capped at 65 degrees. I want to store that extra 10 degrees Celsius, which is enough hot water on a 150 litre geyser for 2 people to have a shower at night and in the morning. And the next one would be my is this pool pump system, sorry, this is a fully autonomous control system. By starting to implement a control system, this takes quite a bit of programming skills and knowledge, because Home Assistant is not as an example, that's not the only thing you can use, but it's quite a tricky thing to set up if you're not familiar with programming. And it does require a bit of coding knowledge to set up. So basically with that program, you can, instead of identifying, just have to go identifying which period you can run a geyser at, you can let it run automatically in a sense. So if you set up a Home Assistant correctly, where it can pull information from the inverter, whether it be through MQTT snooping or through the Modbus protocols, it can track your solar production, your battery capacity, your available battery capacity, and obviously your grid import export. And based on those 3 values, you can make all the decisions that, or it can automatically make all the decisions that it needs to maximize your solar production and minimize your consumption from the utility. So a simple example of how this can work is, let's say you've got a pool pump and a geyser. Obviously, you don't want cold water, so your geyser will always have a priority to run. And but a pool pump is, I wouldn't say it's essential to run it every day. So if you have a very overcast day, you can tell it, should your PV production drop under a certain threshold, or your grid import is over a certain threshold, then it can simply switch off the pool pump and keep it off for a period before it attempts to switch it on again. And if you've got multiple geysers, where on a normal sunny day, the software will run both geysers simultaneously and make sure, but if you've got a bad weather day or overcast day, it can start alternating the geysers throughout the heating period, just so that you don't have your peak load higher than your peak production at that point. So there's a lot of ways that this can be customized to work better and smarter. On the pictures I've got there, it's just an example for my pool pump that I've set up personally in my house. Also, it works on a timer. I've identified that I only need to run my pool pump 2 hours a day to keep the water nice and clean. And that's anything more than that, I'm wasting electricity. So every day it switches on at 1 o'clock and it switches off at 3 p.m. Like I said, if it's an overcast day, I can simply log in from anywhere in the world and I can switch off the pump and it will only switch on again on the next on cycle, which will be tomorrow. Well, thank you, everyone. If you've got any questions, please just post it in the Q&A section.
Thank you very much, Renier.
Thanks, Renier. Much appreciated. All right, guys, just a reminder again, if there are any questions, please pop them into the Q&A box. As a reminder, there are some, I believe, Amazon gift cards up for grabs to the attendees. So just as a reminder, we will do a draw afterwards. Our Solar Academy team will do the draw afterwards, and then they'll contact those attendees who won the gift cards directly in order to provide it to them. But yeah, the other thing to mention, again, another reminder is that this recording will be available on our YouTube channels as well as our Solar Community page. While we're waiting for any questions, that Solar Community page is a really great platform that we've developed for our installers, customers, EPCs, developers, etc. to pop on. There's lots of webinars happening globally, as well as a lot of information shared on our blog. If you're having an issue on the site, it's quite a nice platform to use to, put your question or pose your question and get some answers, not only from our Solar Academy, but also from the from like-minded installers, etc. And then otherwise, we do have our own service center, as I'm sure you are aware, where you can contact if you're having issues on your product or setup issues, etc. I still don't see any questions coming through. We'll give it another minute. Otherwise, we can then close. I'll take that as a positive, gentlemen. It looks as though we covered all the information that the attendees were looking for. It's always a good thing. But yeah, thank you very much, guys. Ladies and gentlemen, on the other side, thank you very much for joining. Thanks to the speakers, Renier and David, for joining us. Much appreciated. And looking forward to the next one. And yeah, looking forward to seeing hundreds and thousands of megawatts of GoodWe inverters being installed by you guys. Thank you and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.